Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We have a ton to talk about tonight. One of the craziest weekends I can remember in Division II football. We'll talk today about Sioux Falls winning the key to the city. They beat Augustana in an upset. Also, Notre Dame falls to Charleston. That is Notre Dame's first loss of the year. Fort Hays State with a big comeback win over Nebraska Kearney. And Virginia Wise knocks off Lenore-Ryan. That is the second loss this year for Lenore-Ryan. We'll talk about all of those things. But first, let's start out in the Gulf South. West Alabama and West Georgia, the two ranked teams that played this past weekend. It was a 38-20 win by West Alabama. West Georgia had a 24-17 halftime lead and then expanded the lead to 38-20 after the third, and that was where it ended. And Justin, there's a wide margin of victory, but does the score make it, or is the score an accurate reflection of the game?
I don't think so. I think it was a pretty close game across the board. It was 14-14 after the first quarter, and then West Alabama outscored them 14-3 in the second half. So it was really that game of adjustment. Second half, West Alabama was able to pull away, but I think it was a pretty close game. I think it was a pretty back and forth game early. And then again, like I said, second half adjustments just kind of seemed to favor the Tigers. West Georgia wasn't able to really get into a rhythm, I didn't think, in the second half. When offensively, when they could move the ball, they could just never finish drives. They can never score and cap them off. So it was definitely a good game. Again, a matchup of two top 15 teams. So it's definitely a good game. Jack McDaniels was 25 of 34 for 323 with 2 touchdowns for the Tigers. This is the first time that West Alabama's 5-0 in program history, which is really hard to believe, I think, when you think back about the history of that program. This is the first time they're 5-0. So I definitely I think it was a good game. And to me, it was just a typical Gulf South game. I mean, it was a battle between two top 15 teams. I don't think this loss probably takes West Georgia out of playoff contention at this point. I think it's, I think the Gulf South is strong enough that I think a one-loss team could win it. So I don't think it takes them out of the playoffs, but it makes the road a little bit harder going forward.
Certainly. And what do you think? Obviously, nobody picked West Alabama to win. Later in our pick'em, we all got that wrong and picked West Georgia. So have we? I mean, I have no. We've been sleeping on them, or is this just a day where maybe West Alabama got the best of West Georgia? Or have we been overrating West Georgia? Or is the truth in the middle? I honestly don't know.
I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, Brandon. I think that West Alabama is a very, very good team. I thought going into the season they had the potential to be a 1-2 first, second place team in the conference. This was a game that I thought if they wanted to win the conference, this is a game they had to go win. And they did that. So I think if they want to compete for a conference championship and make a run in the playoffs, this was a game they had to win. I'm not surprised they won. I liked West Georgia at home,
Gotcha.
but I think that they just came out and played better on this day. I don't think we're overhyping West Georgia, and I don't think we're overlooking West Alabama. I think this was just. It's a really, really good game. I'm not surprised. I am a little surprised in the second half, though. I'm surprised West Georgia went cold offensively, was only held to 3 points in the second half. I am surprised by that because I think they have a pretty high-powered offense. So that surprised me a little bit. But I guess the outcome of the game doesn't surprise me, and I think this is just a typical Gulf South game.
Agreed. It had a real GSC flavor to it. Anybody who's paid attention to football or pays attention to football, and at our level, there's a certain style and flavor in different parts of the country, and that was definitely had a GSC flavor. But let's stick with the GSC because there were two other interesting games, one more than the other. West Florida had to come from behind to beat Delta State on the road. A good comeback win for them, but they struggled for a while with Delta.
They did, and I'll be honest with you, I turned that game on a little late, and they were down, and it was surprising at first to see to watch what you're happening. I think Delta's a very good football team. I don't think their record necessarily indicates how good they really are at this point in the season. When they stretched that lead out to 20, I knew it was going to be hard for West Florida to get back in it. I knew they had the offensive firepower to do it. It just didn't seem to be in sync. Delta State is big. They're big. They're physical, and they kind of did some things I thought to West Florida that hasn't been done yet this year, just in physicality. But then they stretched the lead out to 20 going into the half, and so to me, it really came down to what happened with the Argos when they came out in the second half. What was that going to look like? Were they going to fold up shop? Or they're going to come out and just and start chipping away at it. And that's exactly what they did. They outgained Delta State 276 to 183 in the second half. They forced 2 turnovers and had 2 huge fourth down stops there in the second half that Delta State could have kicked field goals on and taken the points. So I believe the final was a 6-point difference. So right there could be the 6 points had Delta State kicked those field goals. And maybe it does change the game, maybe it doesn't. But at that point, the momentum is going all towards West Florida. And so I'm not surprised they came back. They're number 1 in the country for a reason. They've played a very tough non-conference schedule early. So them coming back wasn't really a surprise. What was a little surprising, though, is they averaged 6 yards a run, which is not what they want to do. They're a pass-first team, and that's their bread and butter. So to average 6 yards a carry on the ground, I thought was impressive. This was the largest comeback in West Florida history. A little side note there. I know it's a newer program, but still the largest comeback they've ever had. And, Delta State had 580 yards of offense, 459 through the air. So it was still a good day for them. And like I said, Delta State's lost 3 in a row now after starting 2-0. I don't think that right now their record indicates, their team at this point. I think they're a pretty good team. And Delta State travels to Valdosta this week. So I'm not going to say they're out of contention, but I don't know. It's going to be a tough road to hoe, and they need some help.
Right. Yeah. Behind the scenes, people have asked me this year and it's usually people who really don't follow Division II certainly as closely as we do, but they've asked, is West Florida unbeaten? And Matt has, correctly pointed out that West Florida is susceptible on defense. And we saw that in the first half, obviously. And I have often said, and because it's the case in football, is that a team that's very quarterback centric, all it takes is one bad game, one off game. It could be an off quarter by a quarterback to derail your chances in that game. I feel like we saw both of those things play out, but West Florida was good enough to overcome them. So we probably saw the worst and the best of West Florida in a single game.
Well, and I think West Florida, and I think you hit, if you were the one that said it, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, I think their defense is kind of their weakest link, so to speak. They're built to outscore you. They're built to score a lot of points in a hurry. So I think we saw that, and I thought the first half they just didn't look in sync. They were, they dropped some balls, and Austin Reed just seemed to be out of rhythm, and they weren't completing the balls that you're used to seeing. And so I think that was what happened. But once they found their rhythm in the second half, you see how quickly they can change a game. And I think that's going to be the key for going forward in the Gulf South Conference play is how's their defense going to stack up? Are they going to be able to get a couple key stops in games to if the offense does have another bad day to win that game? Because this is kind of lightning in a bottle, I think, for the most part. You can't put yourself down 20 points every week and expect to come back and win the ball game.
Justin, I noticed when I saw that the weather was poor, I immediately thought this is the kind of time where they'd be really at risk because with the precision they have in their passing game, no passing team's thrilled about seeing a downpour. And you pair that with the fact that they're playing a team that we all have a lot of respect for and think is probably one of those teams in the conference that you always know right now is going to be a tough game with Dixie. Yep. So when I took a look at that, I thought that, okay, maybe this is when they get upset because of the conditions really are not in their favor. So I was impressed with the heart that they showed coming back in a game like that, the heart of a champ.
I agree. Definitely the kind of the stars aligned, so to speak, for that upset to happen, I think, with the weather. But I will tell you on the flip side of that, though, if you're a passing team like West Florida is, that doesn't per se have an indoor facility, you're going to practice in the rain. You're going to play in the rain. So I think the way the game has evolved now with such pass-heavy offenses, you're used to it and you deal with it. Does it impact some of those catches? Absolutely. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I just think that I think they're good enough to overcome the rain. And obviously a downpour changes it, but I wouldn't say, hey, that was the reason they lost, but it could have contributed to it.
One other game of the Gulf South quickly, Justin. Valdosta struggled with Shorter. They led 14-13 at the half. Then absolutely obliterated them in the second half. Are there any takeaways from that game?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, they were up 14-0 on Shorter. They had a 14-0 lead. They let Shorter. I felt like they let Shorter come back in that game a little bit. Gave them some hope, but I thought Valdosta State, Coach Goff, they did a great job coming out in the second half and just kind of getting after him and saying, yeah, we let you have 13 points, or you got 13 points on us, but that wasn't supposed to happen. We are who we are, and we're going to show you that now. And they came out there, outscored them 35-0 in the second half, had a season high 574 yards of offense compared to just Shorter's 49 in the second half. So I thought it was a great job. And Valdosta State is a lot of times a team when you think of Valdosta State, you think of their offense. You think of the high-powered offense that they have. But I think looking at it after the game, they only allowed 49 yards of offense in the second half. And so I thought their defense played well in the second half. And I guess it's not something you typically would think of when you think of Valdosta State, but
sometimes, it'll depend. So some years they've had very great defenses, and Jesse Tuggle would probably be very angry at us for saying that Valdosta State doesn't have good defenses. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on. The Gulf South was a great week, and we anticipate many more great weeks in the Gulf South. Let's flip it to the Northern Sun, where Sioux Falls beat Augustana. They were the 12th ranked team in our poll. 28-26. It was a really tight game the entire way. No team had more than a 7.1 score advantage ever. Giovanni Pura. No, I said that wrong. How do you say that, Matt?
Purpura. It's okay.
Purpura. His pick was essentially sealed the game for Sioux Falls. There's like 1:07 left in the game. And, one surprising thing was that I never thought I would see a day when, at least under John Anderson, where Sioux Falls would win with only 5 yards rushing.
Yeah, for a team that really puts an emphasis on running the football. Thurl Reisdorfer, their star running back, got hurt early, and they had to kind of figure out different ways to do things. And you're going to see them kind of push in a pile here for a touchdown from about 3 yards out. The Cougars did. They had an early lead in a very competitive football game. You're going to see right here, Jared Epperson gets loose for a 50-yard score. He's the leading rusher in the Northern Sun. He went for over 150 yards for Augustana in the football game. Then you're going to see Sioux Falls score again. Back and forth football game the whole way. And then Augustana goes ahead, battles back. Scores here from a yard out. Kyle Sadler has a keeper, the quarterback for Augustana. Then they went up 24-21, and then USF hits a post route right here to Dom Pegley for a score right into our neighborhood. I was right behind the goalposts at that time. I thought he was throwing the pass to me for a moment. And then an interception here with a minute left to seal it. And this game's got a lot of venom between the two sides. It's a strong matchup in Sioux Falls. When University of Sioux Falls joined the conference, the Northern Sun, back in 2012, they've now played 9 games between the two teams in Sioux Falls here in the series, and USF has won 7 of the 9 and had won back the key as a result of that performance there on Saturday.
Would Witt catch that pass 50-50?
For sure.
So let me ask you this then. Tundra Man has a question, Witt. Do you think Sadler had a bad day, or was it the coup defense that was able to put enough pressure on him to get him rattled?
I had put that in my my column this last week that I thought that was the key for Sioux Falls was to pressure the quarterback, Kyle Sadler. Sadler was 20 of 44 throwing with one interception, obviously a key one there at the end. And he has struggled against Sioux Falls at times in the past. He was 6 of 22 throwing back on their game in 2019. So when they started to get better pressure on him in the back half of the game, I think it really did make quite a bit of difference, especially at a time when Sioux Falls didn't have their star running back to rely on. And Sioux Falls was kind of in a little bit of a dead spot there offensively for a while until they went into a 2-minute drill there towards the end of the football game and hit that open post to win it.
Very good. So,
how does this game affect kind of the conference standings a little bit there in the Northern Sun? How does it kind of affect the conference race?
The conference race, frankly, is a little bit wild, Devin. It's there is no undefeated team anymore. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to have a series of teams with one loss, and almost all of them. It's a lot of teams have to play each other yet. So there is so much left out ahead because for the most part, the only competition they've had is North against South, division games.
Crossovers.
So now, yeah, exactly. So now you're going to be looking at, the Augustanas lining up against the Mankatos of the world and the Winona States and the Wayne States. Augustana's got a lot of meat left on the bone right now.
Okay.
So it'll be real interesting to see how they perform, especially coming off a loss like this, considering what they have left on their slate.
Right. Let's move on to another game in the NSIC, one that I picked correctly, and I will brag about that later because that's not one of the only things I can brag about. Was that Wayne State beats Minnesota Duluth and then Winona in back-to-back weekends. So great job by the Wildcats and John McMiniman, getting that program heading in the right direction.
Yeah, Wayne State wins 38-21. They easily outgain Winona in a game where I just felt like Winona coming in was probably the better football team. Of course, I was proven this week how wrong I can be. I was 3-4 in my picks for the conference, which I have never been that bad in any given 1 week. So it kind of speaks to how much I have my arms wrapped around things. Yes, I am taking that L for sure. But Wayne State was able to force quarterback Owen Burke from Winona into 3 picks, and they sacked him 4 times. And so a lot of headlines are coming for the Wayne State offense, but defensively they're holding teams to a lower number as well.
Very good. Now let's move on then. A great weekend and fun weekend in the Northern Sun. A surprising outcome in the MEC, though. Charleston with a 38. I'm sorry, I don't have the backs. What was the score of that one, Chuck? I have 38, and what was the Notre Dame score?
38-28 was
28. There you go.
Final.
Okay.
And
I was looking for it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
very good.
38-28 final, and that was
Okay.
another example of an unranked team upsetting a ranked team, and I
Right.
believe this was the highest ranked team to lose this past weekend. Notre Dame was number 6 in our D2 football poll.
Gotcha.
So highest ranked team that lost. A surprise, yes. Not something that completely caught me off guard. I did certainly think it was possible that Charleston could win that game. They were the second ranked team in the preseason poll, and these two teams did play for the spring championship just a couple months ago.
Certainly. But, in terms of national recognition, though, it's 2 completely different worlds right now for the program, even though Charleston has had good seasons in the past. Right now, Notre Dame is, a top 25 team. Charleston's a relative unknown, and that at least, right now. And that's where I was thinking the perception of a surprise win would have come.
Signature wins are really what get you some attention around the country. We're going to talk about that a little bit later with UVA-Wise upsetting Lenore Ryan as well. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's those kind of signature wins that really get some recognition and get a little bit of appreciation. But this win for Charleston was a team victory without a doubt, offense and defense. But the discussion really has to start with the defense. Their head coach, Pat Kirkland, really gave a lot of credit to his defensive coordinator, Zach Johnson, for the game plan that he came up with and just how effectively they were able to disrupt Chris Brim. And Chris Brim's a quarterback that I hold in very high regard. Right. And we have a lot of great quarterbacks in D2 this year. I put him up there in the top 5 with some of the best that we have. He was only 15 for 40 on Saturday. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And those interceptions, by the way, both came in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, when they're down to their last gasp. So they had a tremendous game plan to disrupt him. Charleston defense was just unbelievable. They had 9 punts forced, 6 3-and-out possessions for Notre Dame. I mean, if you've seen Notre Dame's offense, to think that they had 6 3-and-out possessions in the same game, it's almost unthinkable. So just a tremendous job by that Charleston defense. And on the other side of the ball, Charleston is a rushing team. So they're going to get their rushing yards regardless of who they play. But what really surprised me is the explosive plays that they were able to rip off against the Notre Dame defense. Tyreek McAllister, running back from Charleston, had touchdown runs of 35, 58, and 61 yards. He had 180 total for the game. So that's just something you don't expect to see against that Notre Dame defense. And so what this really sets up, I'm going to kind of just jump in and address some of the questions that I saw that came in. This really sets up a fascinating scenario in the Mountain East, because next week, Notre Dame plays at Frostburg State. Frostburg is currently 5-0. They've already beaten Charleston. So if Frostburg State's able to win that game against Notre Dame, they have a clear path to the Mountain East Championship in a pretty forceful hold on the league. If Notre Dame wins that, then it's really up for grabs. You're going to have a bunch of one-loss teams in conference play, and then it's really anybody's league up for grabs. So the way things have gone in 2021, you have to think that that's what's going to happen, and we'll just have total chaos towards the end of the season and have no idea who's going to win that conference. But it sets up a fascinating scenario. I think Notre Dame probably still stays in the top 25. I think that they're still a really, really good football team. I think they probably stay in the top 25. I don't think Frostburg comes into the top 25 yet, but if you get the win next week against Notre Dame and get to 6-0, then yeah, you definitely get into the top 25. So yeah, it's pretty exciting times in the Mountain East.
I tell you what, later on we'll pose that to you about who belongs in the top 25 that's not there yet. But in the meantime, let's flip it and flip the script, go to MIAA.
That was a professional tease, by the way. I love that professional tease right there.
Don't ever accuse us of any type of professionalism ever. But
that might be a little strong, Devin.
Yes. Yeah, in the MIAA, Fort Hays with what would not have been considered an upset, in my opinion, in the preseason, but at this point in the year, it is considered an upset. They beat Nebraska Kearney 42-35. UNK led 21-0 at halftime and 35-14 late in the third, but Fort Hays scored 28 straight and took the lead with a minute 7 left. One of the best comebacks we've seen in quite a while in D2 football.
Yeah, pretty much. In this game, it was kind of crazy. I was at the Northwest Missouri Western game, and I was kind of watching the highlights they kind of went through, and Kearney dropped out to a 21-0 lead, did everything they wanted to on offense. I mean, TJ Davis doing his thing, running the ball. He threw a couple of touchdowns. He didn't have an incompletion until late in the third quarter. They were up 35-14. He had his first incompletion, and they kind of came out at halftime. It was 21-0 at halftime, you just said. Teams traded scores there in the third quarter. So went to the fourth quarter, 35-21, and Fort Hays just started saying, screw it, we're going to attack them vertically down the field. And they were getting chunk play after chunk play against the Nebraska Kearney defense. The Lopers, it was like a hot knife through butter. I mean, it was not a pretty sight there for the Kearney defense. And Fort Hays just kept pressing the issue. Got a late sack on TJ Davis. I think you're going to see that here on the highlight as he was trying to make something happen. This one, the game was tied. And Fort Hays got a big sack there, got the ball back, and a big run here down the sideline by their backup running back down to the 1 yard line. He'd punched in on the next play. And that was all she wrote. TJ Davis threw a pick on their ensuing drive with like 30 seconds left. He's trying to make a play happen. And for Nebraska Kearney, it went like the offense just went completely doormat. I mean, they had a couple of plays where they kind of wish they had it back, but they were still moving the ball a little bit. It just kind of Fort Hays made the plays late that Kearney wasn't. So it was kind of a surprising finish for me. I thought Kearney had the offense to kind of keep Fort Hays off the field. They did. They had the ball for 35, 36 minutes. There with it, just Chance Fuller and the Fort Hays offense was just scoring so quickly. It didn't really matter how long Kearney had the ball. You can see the game-ending interception, a great play by the defender for Fort Hays. But just a fantastic comeback for Fort Hays. Fort Hays, in their Week 2 loss versus Missouri Western, they came out at halftime and Mo West kind of boat racing there in the second half. So kind of an opposite of that game for Fort Hays. Their 2 losses are to Northwest and Western, and they got a big win here versus Kearney. We'll kind of talk about them later. But Fort Hays they got a huge win there at home versus Nebraska Kearney, kind of their in-conference rival, kind of the closest team to them there in the MIAA. And for Nebraska Kearney, that's a huge loss because now you have one loss. You haven't played Northwest yet later in the year at Northwest. That's a huge loss for their playoff chances and their MIAA chances. They still have a chance there. Road wins are tough to come by in the MIAA, but that's a game that if you're up 21-0 mid-second quarter and 35-14 late third, you have to find a way to win that game with it. So it's a huge loss for Nebraska Kearney, and for Fort Hays, they've kind of righted the ship after the first couple of weeks that were kind of rough.
Does it change your perception of how the season might play out in the MIAA?
I think it may have just reinforced it a little bit more, actually, with the craziness of everyone in the conference. I think Northwest has kind of stabilized themselves as kind of the alpha dog in the conference once again, but everyone else is kind of in that middle spot, and week by week, you're not sure how teams are going to show up and play each other. I mean, you saw this week, Pitt State, Missouri Southern was a 4-point game, and Southern had the ball in Pitt territory and turnover on downs in the game kind of deal, and that game should never have been no business being close kind of deal. So it's going to be a weird year in the MIAA where teams just kind of come up and beat each other. I know Emporia State was kind of down. They just boat raced Washburn this week. It was kind of a weird week in the MIAA. And I know it was rivalry weekends, makes things a little bit different. Right. But at the same time, there's no one really separating themselves from the pack there in the MIAA right now in the middle of that conference.
Devin, I realize that you're not aware of the fact that you're not supposed to make food references during this show, but when you said a hot knife through butter, Brandon and I didn't hear anything you said after that because we've been thinking about food and biscuits and other things of that sort.
Well, see, I also watched the Chiefs play today on defense, and it was the same kind of thing, so I already had it in my mind a little bit there. It was just so easy to get through that. It's sometimes watching defense can be rough in certain games. So,
all right. So let's go back to you, Chuck. And let's talk about a team within the conference that you cover. Lenoir-Rhyne falls to UVA-Wise 35-28. Lenoir-Rhyne was penalized 12 times in the game, 113 yards, and the offense allowed 6 sacks. Now, you push back a little bit, and probably rightfully so, about Charleston not being as big of an upset as one might have expected. Would you say this Virginia-Wise is the same case, or is this a pretty surprising upset by UVA-Wise?
This one surprised me, maybe a little less so because I did watch UVA-Wise the week before when they beat Carson Newman very convincingly. But I didn't really know what to think of that because Carson Newman just has a ton of problems this year. So I didn't really know what to take away from that. I certainly thought Lenoir-Rhyne was going to win this game. And I watched the whole thing earlier this afternoon, and it was a difficult watch. I mean, neither team was really in sync offensively in the first half. And for Lenoir-Rhyne, it was really a slog to sit through it. I mean, 2 weeks ago when they lost at Newberry, they just got beat. Newberry had a good game plan. They executed well. Lenoir-Rhyne just didn't have any answers, and they got beat. Well, it's football. That happens. But the loss to UVA-Wise was a little bit different, and I don't want to take anything away from UVA-Wise, but Lenoir-Rhyne had a lot to do with losing this game. They just had so many costly mistakes, 12 penalties for 113 yards. And by the way, those are just the ones that were accepted. There were quite a few others that were declined. And most of those penalties were on defense, and multiple third down penalties that kept drives alive. I think I counted at least 3 of those. A lot of pre-snap penalties, which just frustrate coaches to no end. And just a lot of mistakes. There were a couple times early in the game where the defensive line just didn't even get to the line of scrimmage and get set before the snap when Wise was running up tempo. And they fixed that later in the game, but it was costly mistakes, really costly mistakes. It really hurt them. So, you have to give a lot of credit to UVA-Wise. Their blitz packages on defense, the Wise defense did a phenomenal job getting pressure on Grayson Willingham, probably more pressure than he's used to seeing. And I think that really led to the sacks that we saw, 6 sacks. Willingham had 3 interceptions, a couple of bad balls that we don't typically see from him. So, it was just a really tough day for Lenoir-Rhyne. They never quit. They battled. They did everything they could to try to fight through it, and they got a couple scores to make it close at the end. Even got an onside kick and had an opportunity to try to punch one in and tie the game. But it was just an uphill battle for most of the second half. And I think really the best way to sum up their day, first drive of the second half, Wise started with the ball. Lenoir-Rhyne stopped them on third down. On fourth down, they end up taking a penalty, moves them back a few yards, and then Lenoir-Rhyne inexplicably ends up using a timeout. I have no idea what they were doing. They burn a timeout while the clock's already stopped. And then they come out and roughed the kicker. Questionable call. There wasn't really good video on that. It might have been a little bit questionable, but if you hit the kicker, the flag's going to come out. Extends the drive. Wise goes down and scores, and they make it 28-10. And for the rest of the day, Little Ryan's just playing from a deep hole, and they could never quite get out of that. So I thought that really kind of summed up the whole day for them. Really tough loss. This definitely drops them out of the top 25.
Mm-hmm.
And now really probably puts them on the outside looking in right now, at least as far as playoffs. They only have a 10-game schedule, so the best they can do is 8-2. I don't know. We'll see what they can do to recover from this, but they've got a lot of work to do. They just didn't play well. They didn't coach well. Not a good day for them at all. But for UVA Wise to kind of spin it around a little bit more positively, since they moved over from the MIAA, they've been a pretty anonymous team in Division II. So when you can go back-to-back weeks beating Carson Newman and Lenore Rhine, that's taking on the establishment. When you get wins like that, you earn some respect for yourself. You earn a name for yourself. And we should remember, this is only their second year in the South Atlantic Conference. So, people start to think about you a whole lot differently when you beat those teams. So it's been a big 2 weeks for them.
So who's emerged as the favorite in the South Atlantic? Is it Wingate?
It's definitely Wingate for now. It's funny you mentioned that, though, Devin, because the way the season has gone so far, Wingate played Saturday night against Tusculum, and that came down to the last possession. Wingate won that with a field goal with about a minute left, and Tusculum actually had a drive coming that could have won that game. Wingate actually ended up getting a pick six in the final play, which extended the point margin a little bit. But that game was very much in doubt down to the very end. So Wingate's the only team that's still undefeated overall and in the conference. So undisputedly the favorite right now. But they've got a lot of tough games coming up. They still have to get through Lenore Rhine, who by then, late in the season, I'm sure the Bears will be a better team. They'll be ready. Wingate still has to get through an improved Mars Hill team. They've got to play UVA Wise, who we just talked about.
On the road.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of tough games. I think this will be a year where no one gets through the season undefeated.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be the case in a lot of conferences, and I think that'll be the case in the SAC for sure.
All right, some other good games in the top 25 that were upsets last week. One of those involved number 11 Midwestern State. They traveled to Ellensburg, Washington, fell 30-20 to Central Washington. Great win for the Wildcats. Certainly a disappointing loss for Midwestern State.
Yeah, so I watched this game, and Midwestern State and Central Washington went back and forth. Nobody had a margin greater than 7 points until the very end of the game. If you kind of look at this game, it really came down to the fourth quarter. And if you let a team, the home team, stick around in a game like that, you're always susceptible to having that final push and that home field advantage kick in. Midwestern's quarterback, Dylan Sterling Cole, actually threw for 4 interceptions. 2 of those interceptions actually happened towards the middle of the fourth and the end of the fourth quarter. And so, Midwestern has a chance to retake the lead, throws an interception again to the same guy. And you just kind of sense that momentum favors Central Washington in the fourth quarter. Midwestern actually outgained Central Washington in this game, but it's really hard to overcome four turnovers, and that's kind of what you had in this upset.
And that's why what we said a couple of weeks ago, that stats are for losers. That's one of the reasons why you lose or win the total offense battle and lose the game. So another one, Lindenwood upset Truman State. I don't think people consider that an upset at the beginning of the year, but at this point it was 31-21. The Bulldogs fall to Lindenwood, so it's their first loss of the season. Another game also, Tiffin was the final team to fall, ranked team. They fell to Hillsdale 24-21. That's the second straight loss for Tiffin, and I have to assume they're going to fall out of the poll as they were number 4. We got some other interesting games last week. Quickly, some teams that struggled that you think would not have. Colorado Mines was taken to overtime by Western Colorado, and That's not something that we would have expected in the past. I think maybe the powers in the RMAC, the tougher programs, might not be as strong as they have been in the past. And I certainly think there's some improvement on some of the other programs in the RMAC. New coaches and new energy for those programs. We talked about Wingate. They came back and won a back and forth battle with unranked Tusculum. And then Shepherd rebounds from the Kutztown loss by thumping Shippensburg. And Bajent had 5 touchdowns. And, he's kind of getting to the Michael Jordan level where to get like a player of the week, he's got to throw for like 10. Everybody else is getting the Charles Barkley MVP award, So,
relatively pedestrian numbers for him
right.
by his standards, but well over 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. And also Shepherd ran for like 260 yards on Saturday too. So they had two players that were over 100 yards rushing. So, when they run for that much and he's still well over 300 yards passing with 5 TDs, that's a pretty darn good day.
They only scored 59 points. I mean, come on.
Brandon, while you're talking about, some of the top 25 results, Minnesota Duluth looked a little, underwhelming in their game. They were without starting quarterback John Larson, who is a huge key to what they do. And we've seen in years past when he's not in the lineup, they're kind of just another team in the Northern Sun, to be real frank. They were without him and also without a key running back and tight end and, another wide out. So they're down quite a few bodies at the moment. They scored with 2 seconds left on a pass in the corner of the end zone to win that football game at Moorhead. Yeah. Otherwise, they're probably dropping out of the top 25 as a result of it. But they need him back, John Larson, as soon as they can. They really do. So,
well, I think that's going to Henderson State won a battle of unbeatens in the GAC with a good win over Southeastern Oklahoma. We'll mention them a little later in the program. I think they're going to be part of our pick'em segment. I want to move on to something. 2 of you guys had a great idea about who should be ranked that isn't. So this is throwing it on some of you who didn't have, weren't privy to this question. But Matt, let's start with you. Somebody not in the poll that maybe should be in the poll.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to make a case right now. And when I just did my poll, I had them sneaking in, towards the end. And that's Wayne State. They have wins in back-to-back, weeks with Duluth and with Winona State. 2 teams. I can't think of all that many times in the past 10 years where teams have beaten those squads in consecutive weeks in the Northern Sun. So I'm very impressed with what they're doing right now. It's not just offensively; they're stopping people as well. So I've got them, coming in right at the tail end of that top 25, and so I'm putting a little shout out for them is what I'm doing here. You bet.
All right, how about Chuck?
I have several I'd like to mention. I actually agree with Whit 100% on his assessment.
That's not possible. We don't agree that often, Chuck.
We actually agree on more than you think.
Where's your cat?
She's actually right there. She's right back there. You can't see her because she blends right into the chair. But I agree on that one. And one of my other top 2 or top 3, I'm not going to talk about because I suspect Chris is going to want to talk about them. So the one I go to is Bentley out of the Northeast 10. 5-0 football team. Actually won the last 5 games of 2019 as well. Didn't play at all in the fall of 2020 or the spring of 2021. So when you string that together, they've won 10 straight games. Obviously, this fall is all that really counts, but 10 straight wins, 5-0 this year. Started the year with just, an incredible win over Westchester, just pounded Westchester away. I've not really seen, and I've seen a lot of Westchester football games. Bentley just pounded them. By the way, Westchester's won all 4 games since then. And also Bentley has defeated a couple other pretty good teams too. They beat Stonehill, beat American International. So I think the challenge for them is by the time we get to the end of the season, that Westchester game is probably still going to be their best quality win. They do have some upcoming games against New Haven, Southern Connecticut State. So, there's still opportunities for them to get wins over winning football teams. But I kind of suspect that by the time we get to the end of the year, that Westchester game is still going to be their best win, and that's all the way back in week 1. But still, incredible win, and it's just a sound football team. They don't have a lot of weaknesses. They do a lot of things well. Good rushing offense. They're physical at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Really, really good on third down. So, I've had them at 20, 24, 25 really since week 2. I think they've earned the recognition.
All right, Chris, since Chuck mentioned you, is there anybody, and I haven't checked your ballot yet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is there anybody that you...
What does that say? Wit is awesome? What?
No. Wrong. It probably does, but it's the wrong wit. Or the right one in this case, I guess.
Always something.
Yes, exactly right. So, Chris, who would you want to add to the poll? Or who did you add to the poll for that matter?
Yeah. I got 2. The first one is Chowan.
Okay.
I think, 5-0. First time in a very, very, very long time that Chowan is 5-0. They got some signature wins against some, how crazy the sack is going right now. And then, they've proceeded to dominate teams, and we talked about that in top 25. You beat the teams that you should beat. Well, they're getting a lot of style points right now. Chowan actually has the highest scoring offense right now in Division II. Their defense is much, much improved. And they've got a pretty big test against a very aggressive front four at Bowie State this week. So, I mean, there aren't a lot of teams that should have some consideration here, but I think Chowan is definitely top 25 here. The other one is Frostburg State, and kind of what you mentioned earlier, Chuck, about the fact that they beat Charleston. I think that was an overtime game. Notre Dame is like the really big test here, but again, with all these teams kind of coming out of the poll, most likely, what better teams do you have here to recognize than Chowan and Frostburg State here?
And can you give me some history on Frostburg State? This is cool. We haven't heard a whole lot about in the history of D2. What's kind of their story here in Division II? Because I haven't heard a whole lot about them.
So
great question. You want to take that, Chris?
Yeah, I could take some of that. So Frostburg was a Division III school for a long time. Moved up to Division II. I believe it was their second year or second season in Division II. They actually did pretty well their first year. And their head coach Fitzpatrick's doing really, really well. Recruiting there, they recruit in the same backyard as the MEC and the CIAA does. Got a lot of good guys there, a lot of great talent. But they've been competitive in their first 2 seasons in the MEC.
And
Great
Chris,
name,
just to add on to that,
though, you want to add there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. 8-3 in their first full year in Division II, and it's trending that way again. Now, I think they're still in the transition phase, so I don't think playoffs are on the table for them. But you win this weekend, you're looking at a really good shot at a Mountain East championship. So, Justin, did you have a question?
Yeah. So I'm friends with a couple coaches in their conference when they were Division III. And so in talking to them about their transition, they said that they would have they were good enough in Division III to have the opportunity to compete for a conference championship year 1. So there's I think for some of us it may be a surprise that they're doing so well with their transition to D2, but that's pretty good, Devin. But
Devin just angered a bunch of Fayetteville State fans.
Oh, gotcha.
I was going after the Ferris State fans, but okay.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
And Florida State.
There's another FSU even in that same conference. So,
all right, sorry. Just just being open and transparent here. Chuck, Matt and Chris. Chuck, you vote in the poll or do you not?
I do.
You do? Okay, I can't remember who else. Okay, so you 3 vote in the poll. Devin and Justin do not. So this is a question that might, be out of the blue for them. If you guys feel free to not answer, but do you guys have anybody that you think should be in the poll that is not?
I'll let Justin go first.
All right. Appreciate it, Devin.
He'll serve you. He'll serve you up.
Well, I would agree. I think, Chris, you said, I think Chowan, I definitely think 5-0 right now. Definitely should be in contention. Couple big wins against some tough SAC schools early in the year. And then this weekend, 73-7. I mean, they're doing well offensively. I think they are definitely worthy to be in the conversation of top 25. And then the other one that may ruffle a little feathers, but may not, I don't know, is Indy. They lost to Tiffin, number 15, by 3, and then they lost to Ohio Dominican in double overtime, and they came back this week and won 77-10. So I think 2 losses that are probably pretty uncommon for them, but sitting at 3-2. But I definitely think that they proved this week that they slipped out, but they definitely are like on that bubble, to me, that bubble line of top 25 with 2 losses.
Okay, yeah, and I'm gonna agree with Witt with Wayne State. Actually, my high school football coach went to school at Wayne State and played a little football there. Josh Peterson. So I want to give him a quick shout out. He went to Wayne State for a little bit. He was there same time as Danny Woodhead at Chadron, and he said he was very good.
He should have won the Harlan Hill for putting up with you as a player.
You're not wrong. So yeah, he's still coaching there at Southold. So good for him. I want to give him a little shout out. Joe, and I think for the MIAA, the only team that kind of comes to mind, I know Fort Hays maybe because they've won 3 straight. I don't think so. The other MIAA team I put it in above Fort Hays would be Pitt State. Their one loss is to Nebraska Kearney. They didn't play great that game, but they played well in the games outside of that. So I think they should kind of be the next MIAA team to be kind of ranked there. I don't think the MIAA deserves more than what they have in Northwest. And if Kearney stays in the poll kind of deal, those two kind of at right now, and then the other ones are all kind of fringe teams. They have to prove more before they gain love nationally, kind of in my opinion, for those.
All right, very good. Well, let's move on, man. We're showing and talking about teams that are being maybe underranked, but right here is an example of don't pay any attention to anything we say because we are not the best at this. So that's last week's result. We all whiffed on the West Georgia game in the Pick'em, as we talked about earlier, and then the best. Devin did the best with 4 correct selections, and
big dubs.
Yeah, hey, you got to take them while you can get them, brother, because they're not going to be that many. They're not abundant this year. But
Pueblo finally came through for me. That's all I got to say. They finally came through for me.
There's some suspect things going on in that game, just like there's some suspect calls in the Northwest game. It was that type of game.
It was a roughing the passer in overtime in that Pueblo game. That was when the guys already start to make contact and they throws the ball and then they throw the flag. I about threw the remote.
It was pretty
great call.
bad.
Great call. Good
yeah, it was 3rd and 10, so it wouldn't have been called or anything, right?
I'm not saying the fact that I picked that I picked Mesa had anything to do with my bias watching that game, but nonetheless, we're going to move on and pick this week's games. And since Matt is heading over the hill, we made it a little bigger this week so he could see them. So can you actually see those, Whit?
Yeah, I'm good now. If they were even bigger, I'd be all the better. But I'll make do.
Okay, well,
he's so picky.
We'll send the Braille. We'll send them via Braille. And
yes, okay.
In the middle of the week. So this week's game, Frostburg State, we talked about. They are 5-0. They will play at Notre Dame. Bowie State will play at Chowan. Wayne State will play Minnesota State. East Central at Henderson State. And Pittsburgh State will go to Northwest Missouri. And we will start the selections. Let's start. Who did we start with last week?
No idea.
No idea? Okay, let's start with Chris this week then. Chris, you're going to select first this week. First game, Frostburg State at Notre Dame.
I'm going to go with Frostburg State here.
Okay.
I think that Notre Dame is certainly ripe for the picking.
Okay, very good. And next will be Devin.
My favorite FSU picking Frostburg.
Okay. And I'm going to go with Notre Dame. All right. Chuck.
I thought toss-up game, but I think Notre Dame bounces back.
Okay. And Whit?
I'm taking Frostburg State. I kind of thought I'd be going against the grain here, but apparently I'm middle of the pack.
You're just
We're
as
getting all frosty.
conformist. You're just as conformist as anybody else, buddy.
Apparently.
All right, Justin. You will be the last to select this game.
Frostburg State.
Frostburg. Okay. Nah, that's bias. You can't go against your buddies. That's what that's all about. So, just like I picked Wayne State last week.
Pretty much. Yeah, I gotta trust
All
him.
right. All right. Awesome. So Devin, you will be the first to select. Bowie State. Is it Shawan?
I'll go Chuan.
Okay.
Take the home team.
All right. And I will go with Bowie. All right. Chuck.
That's a tough one, but I think I'm going to go with the defensive football team. I'm going to go with Bowie.
Okay. Matt.
You know what? My boy Witt has been doing awesome at quarterback for Chowan.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of guy who could be, around a little bit at the end of the dance when it comes to the Harlan Hill.
Yeah.
That said, I like Bowie getting after him a little bit up front, and so I'm taking Bowie.
Certainly the better looking of all the Wits that we know. Justin.
Chris, that'll be enough. Get a hold of yourself.
Chowan or Bowie State?
Bowie State.
Okay. And Chris, you will be the last to pick.
So this game features one of the top offenses in the country and one of the top defenses in the country in Chowan and Bowie State. And games like that, I tend to go defense. I'm going to go with Bowie State.
Okay. All right. The next game, Wayne State, Nebraska at Minnesota State. And I will start out, and I'm going to pick Minnesota State. Sorry, I'm going to have to pick against some friends, Justin. But unlike you, I am brave enough to do it. So, Chuck,
About to get cut off.
Exactly.
It's a tough one. I'm going to go Mankato.
Okay. Whit.
Tough game for me to pick. If I was looking at this game, a few weeks earlier, I'd probably favor Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
But Mankato, I think, has got their footing under them a bit and has had a group that was not cohesive at first and has gotten better at that. I'm going to take them to win this football game.
All right. Justin, do you have any friends on either of these teams so I know who you're going to pick?
No, I know nobody here, so you're good. It's a coin toss. No, Minnesota State.
Okay.
So Witt's his friend up there. Gotcha.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm following Witt.
Okay. Chris.
I'm going to go with Wayne State here.
Okay.
I'm going to go against the grain.
All right. Very good. And Devin.
I will not follow Chris in that statement. I'm going to go with Minnesota State.
Okay. All right. East Central is at Henderson State. Side note, both of these teams have complained about bias, being ranked, how we view them. So one of you has a chance to put up, and the other one will be shut up. So let's go with that. East Central at Henderson State. Who's going to start this one? I forgot where I left off.
Witt. No, Chuck is.
Was it? Okay, Chuck, go ahead. East Central, Henderson State.
Well, certainly, I think Henderson State has a claim to be a little miffed about not being ranked, and that is another team I would advocate for getting into the top 25, especially now that they have a really good signature win with East Central, and they had a pretty decent spring. They've played well so far. I mean, they did get shut out by Harding in the first week of the season. That's been their best opportunity to really show us what they have, and they got shut out in week 1. Since then, beat Arkansas Tech, Southern Nazarene, Northwest Oklahoma. How many wins do those teams have combined? Not very many. I do think Southern Arkansas is a pretty good team, and they beat Southern Arkansas. So, kudos to that. So, yeah, certainly 4-1's a good place to be. Not the best resume that it could be. So, I'll go Henderson State.
Okay. Whit.
Yeah, I took a look at Henderson State, and I think they just have a little bit better resume, straight up. And I had to wear a red shirt today in support of the Reddies, so I'm going to go ahead and go that direction in this game.
Very good. Justin.
Henderson State. And
Okay.
I don't have any friends up there either. Just in case everybody's wondering.
Well, none of us have any friends at Henderson State after not being ranked for the last couple of weeks. So,
Hey,
Chris,
Justin,
go
I
ahead.
don't have a vote. All right, we don't have any votes. It's not us. We didn't do it.
That's
Hey,
true.
Good
Hey,
call, Devin. Hey,
you're-
we have nothing to do with that.
You're guilty by association, buddy. We all
Would you like to vote?
We win or lose together.
Maybe next year.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Speaking of winning and losing together, East Central's coach called out Troy's article because Troy had picked Southern Arkansas to win big here. So I thought that was pretty interesting. We thank you for your readership. We like when coaches are reading our articles. I know one of them called me out as well on my pick. I thought Chowan was only going to score 30, and he scored 73. So I got a lot of flack for that. Anyways,
Man,
I
you're
digress.
you're pretty horrible not predicting 73 points. I mean, what kind of fool doesn't predict a 70-point game? Anyway, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
I'm going to go with Henderson State here. I think that Henderson State again has the better resume, and I think it's going to be exciting watching them play this week.
Devin Albertson.
All right, I chose Henderson last week, and they pulled through for me against Southeast Oklahoma. I'm going to pull them again. I have the better red shirt with the St. Louis Cardinals. That's for you, Whit. And then I'm taking the Reddies to win this one over East Central.
Okay. And
They eliminated yet or not?
No, they're in the playoffs. 90 wins,
after,
baby.
They will be after one
farts.
playoff.
Oh,
They
boy.
will,
Okay.
yeah, they won 17 in a row. Anyway,
Yeah.
but back to what's important, which is Division II football. Neither of these teams as we talked about, had a decent win until basically this week.
Right.
I think Henderson's more impressive. I'm going to go with them. Obviously, East Central has a chance to keep on improving, and if they do, we'll think more of them. But this is a place where you got to prove it, and sometimes records lie. And East Central in the game that they played against a tough opponent, lost 28-0 to Harding. But anyway, that's a long way of saying Henderson State.
So why do you hate East Central?
Now, I hate for the reason that Chris mentioned. Somebody added us, and I'm like, I don't mind anybody being critical of us anytime. Just don't be smug about it,
Hey, Emporia State liked my tweet this weekend, so I felt pretty good about that. So I'm actually on the good side of people in my conference.
I got you. I can't stand smug. So
Yeah,
okay.
When we get to the end of the season, if somebody's 9-1 or 8-1 and not ranked, I think a coach or an AD has a right to say, hey, what's up? We've got a good resume. We're not even halfway through the season yet, so
Right.
Look, you're going to have your opportunities to get your way in there. Later in the year, East Central still got to play.
Right.
Oklahoma Baptist, which is a team that I know some GAC people think is pretty good. They still have to play Ouachita. They got to play Henderson, obviously, coming up. So you win those games, you're going to get your way into the top 25. You don't get into the top 25 beating two teams that are 0-5 and one team that's 1-4.
And ultimately,
that's just reality. And I'm
right.
not, we're not saying that because we don't like East Central. Of course we do, but you don't get into the rankings beating teams like that. You have to beat good teams when you're on the outside of the top 25. You get in by beating good teams. So they've got their opportunities now. So
especially because they were 3-8 the previous year.
Yeah.
And
they don't have a history of being 9-10 wins every year like
right.
Northwestern or Grand Valley. They can get away with that, or a Duluth or even a Minnesota State, those teams like that. They don't have the history, so it's harder to get.
I've talked about it before, but respect is certainly too slow to come and sticks around too long. It's just the nature of respect. But having said that, let's move on to our last game. Pitt State at Northwest, 4-1 versus 5-0. Northwest Missouri might be down to their third string quarterback, though. So that's what makes this a more interesting game. And are we going to start with Devin on this one? Is that right? Devin,
we can. I can talk about that real quick before we start this game. Yeah, it should be Joseph Cross. If he does get us Cross or Kraus, I don't remember.
Kraus.
The guy at Western doing the announcing, he was saying Krause. I knew that wasn't correct. So kind of going with this, I think Hohensee will still play this week. I think he probably could have played if they need him in the second half versus Missouri Western. It's his foot or ankle that he was kind of gimpy on a little bit. He was on a boot the previous week, and he just kind of re-aggravated it in the moment. But he'll get treatment this week. I think he'll be good to go and ready for that one. And even if he's not, Northwest, their running game has been really good this year with Al McKellar, the UND transfer, and their backup running back in Green have both been really good. And their O-line's played much better this year. And that defense has been absolutely lights out. I know they won 30-7 on Missouri Western. The one touchdown was a defensive touchdown on an incomplete pass. Yes, I said that correctly. They ruled that a fumble on there. On that, let's see here. Okay, yeah, I'm not picking the Gorillas though. I'm picking Northwest. Northwest, their defense is just too good, and they're just too consistent drive to drive on defense. To beat them, you're going to have to score probably 20 to 24 points, probably. And I think Northwest offense can do enough to get this win, even with a third-string quarterback in there. Pitt State, I don't know if they can be able to move the ball enough on Northwest defense without some big plays attacking that secondary. So give me Northwest.
Okay, got it. Devin Pitts picks Pitt State. I will take Northwest Missouri State. Chuck.
I want to take Pitt State in this because it just seems like the most 2021 thing possible, you know, because like I said earlier, I just don't think anybody's going to get through a season without major scares or you know, an upset. And we know that Northwest Missouri State is susceptible to giving up points offensively, whether it's by interception, fumble return, or whatever unicorn you can find. We know that that's an obvious flaw in their game. But I do think that Northwest will prevail in this one.
All right. Matt.
Yeah, Devin, maybe my red shirt is for a different reason tonight.
Do it.
Yeah, that's kind of sneaky, huh? With the troubles that Northwest may have at quarterback, what was it, 2014 when Pitt did the onside kick and had some other wild stuff happen and they ended
The
up
sky
beating-
kick game.
Yeah. So I'm going with the Gorillas in this one because I think Northwest may have a situation there, and I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. But I think that I'm taking them to find a way.
All right, very
So
good.
it's at Wit D2 Football hates Maryville and Northwest. Gotcha.
Oh boy.
Right.
Yes.
Justin.
Come on, Justin, get on the train here.
Can the quarterback coach pick the team that's starting the number 3 quarterback potentially?
Well, I'll be honest with you. If ONC was playing, I'd say it's a no-brainer. What my pick is going to be, but I'm kind of on the fence right now. But
I
think
like
it's
where
gonna
this
be
is going.
Sorry, Whit.
Keep
I
going.
think it's gonna be Northwest.
No.
and
Chris, step
K-Ford.
up.
I'm going to go with Northwest as well.
No.
Well,
I did pick.
You look at Pitt. You look at Pitt's who they played. I mean, it's a 4-1 team that's beaten like 2, historically not great teams. And
I wonder. So is that why they're not ranked?
I would say that's probably it. I mean, Northeastern State beats up on Missouri Southern and Lincoln for their 2 wins. I mean, it's not that strong of a schedule.
Right. So, all right.
I
so
did
that's
pick Pitt State 2 years ago, by the way, and my Northwest people did not let me live that down when Northwest rolled them there at Arrowhead. Not a fall classic this year, which is kind of disappointing because it's always kind of fun to have that at Arrowhead. But it's back on campus again in Maryville. Should be a lot of fun. I'm going to try to go to that game. Should be always fun when those 2 teams kind of meet up, though.
Well, when you're picking these things, nobody's going to get them all right anyway. So you were due, Devin. So, man, did you guys bring paper and a pen this week? I didn't ask you, but my assumption was that we would always remember. But if we did not, we'll just work around it. But we do have some more trivia this week, and it's all about kickers and punters.
I bet.
So all right.
What's the next one about? Attendance?
Long snappers.
Great. You know what? Bill Belichick already gave a 10-minute diatribe about the history of long snapping. So if you want to see that, you can look for it on YouTube. But all right. If you don't have a piece of paper, just show 1, 2, 3, or 4 for A, B, C, or D. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're not even keeping points. It's just fun. All right. The first question. Who was the leader in tackles for a loss after 4 weeks? Brad, I guess it's Dady or Dottie, Eric Hansen, Keyshawn James, or Noah Harris-Lyles? Brad Dottie from Minnesota Duluth, Eric Hansen from Upper Iowa, Keyshawn James from Fayetteville State, Devin's second favorite FSU, or Noah Harris-Lyles from Notre Dame. All right.
Just keep pushing Ferris State on the list, I guess.
A, B, Chuck, D. All right. Do you want me to put that back up, Justin?
Yes, can you? I'm trying to find paper. I can't find any.
That's okay.
All right. It's D. I guess that's
D?
4. Right?
Okay.
4.
Yeah, cool. So let's put up. And it is Eric Hansen from Upper Iowa. So
Yeah.
I think Noah Harris Lyles was too. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4 in some order. I just always put them in there alphabetically. So did anybody get that right?
Of
Whit,
course.
did you get that right? All right, you better.
We got it right.
So.
I think it's kind of funny
course.
the one coach in here is one that's unprepared at the.
No,
It was mentioned in my column, but carry on.
It's the editor that was unprepared. I should.
Hey, look, I've got last week sitting right here. I just don't have blank. I guess I can write it back. We're good to go.
There we go.
I have last week sitting right here.
Very good. All right.
Go ahead and get it laminated next time.
All right. So Jordan Terrell is leading as the nation's leader in rushing yards. Who is second? Cody Schrader from Truman, Justin Felder from Stonehill, Rashad Bodie from Central Washington, or Toriano Clinton from Indianapolis? Schrader, Felder, Bodie, or Clinton. And I hope that Bodie pronunciation is correct. But with 17,000, that's not exaggeration, Division II football players, I'm not going to know the pronunciation of all of them. All right. You guys got your answers? Or
Devin fell out, I think.
Devin did? Oh, okay.
He knew the punting questions were coming up.
I made it back. I got kicked out.
Right, awesome. You're good. You're good. So the answer is B, Justin Felder, Stonehill.
Let's go.
Oh, I'm hot.
Preseason All-American. Sorry, is that an important enough stat for you, or I mean?
Yeah, I'm 2 for 2. Keep them coming.
Okay, very good. All right.
Passing the ball is more fun.
I didn't even study up like Chuck did.
All right. And number 3, Austin Reed set a record with 54 attempts in the national championship game last year. That's attempts. Who held the old record? Brad Ichek, Grand Valley, Kurt Ains, Grand Valley, Josh Lamberson, Northwest Missouri, or Luis Perez, A&M Commerce. And that's in the championship game. Attempts.
I don't think I'm going to be undefeated anymore on this, but
I don't think I got it right, but I got to do it.
That's the point. All right.
I'm completely wrong, but we're going to give it a shot.
D. Chuck, who do you put A? So we got 1A and everybody else. Did anybody pick A, C, D? Okay, very good.
D.
All right. Devin should get beaten because it was actually a trick question. They 2 tied. Ichek in 2009 and Lamberson in 2005. But Devin
I didn't say C.
Oh, did you? Never mind. You get to retain your whatever it is that we were going to.
Was that the 4 overtime game?
No, that was the 2005 game.
Okay.
I was there for both. Were you there for both of those, Brandon?
I was, yes.
Yeah, I was there for both of those.
The 2009 game at the time was the record for attempts. The quarterback Travis Miles in that game. All right, we're ready for a trivia question. Was that 4 or was that number 5? Was that 4?
It was 3, wasn't it?
This is 3. Okay.
How many tosses did Reed have last year? I don't even remember.
54.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that was probably in the question, but anyway.
Yes, it was, but that's okay. Northwest Missouri has the record with 16 straight playoff appearances. What program has the second most? This is consecutive playoff appearances.
Is it still active?
No, it's in history.
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I don't know. It was going to be way too much work to find out who the current active one. That 16 streak is active for Northwest Missouri.
Yeah, it is.
I have a crossed off answer and then my other answer, so don't be fooled by my paper.
Okay. All right. What? So you're going to lose nothing? Anyway, all right. So what do we got here? C, B, B, D, B. All right. And the answer is Grand Valley.
Yeah.
It's 10 from obviously you see 2001 to 2010.
Normally when you cross off your answer, you get it wrong, but I got it right this time.
So you were the kind of guy that just put C on every question on a test, weren't you?
If needed.
Or just looked off Chuck's answers.
Yeah.
That's probably not a bad idea.
I got 3 right so far. I got to be leading the room.
Okay.
I got 3 right.
And last question. Jaleel McLaughlin has the top 2 single season rushing totals in the last 10 years. So he has number 1 and number 2. Who has number 3? Cameron McDonald, CSU Pueblo. Franklin Cuete of Bluesburg. Jaquan Gardner of Humboldt State, or Mark Jones of Gannon. McDonald.
I'm crossing off again. Here it goes.
Okay. McDonald, Cuete, Gardner, or Jones. All right. What's everybody got? B, B. Matt, C, D, C. All right. right. The answer is C. Jaquan Gardner, Humboldt State,
Look out.
22-66.
There we go, Whit.
So
I just remember him having like 0 yards when he came to Maryville that one time, so I wrote him off the list.
yeah, well, that's not necessarily his fault. So, all right, man, time to move on to viewer questions.
No, let's talk about how good I'm doing. Okay, but anyway.
No, well,
Hey,
we can talk about how you're the second best looking wit in D2 football until we find out more.
Because he's better looking than this guy. But anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Devin, real quick, Devin, I think you gave me a hard time for not being prepared, being the only coach in the room and not being prepared.
Yes.
Was that you that said that?
He did.
Maybe.
So,
That was a
funny-
pretty good line, by the way.
No. So it's a funny story, and it's real quick, and you'll appreciate this. So I worked. This is when James Franklin was at Maryland as the offensive coordinator. I'm working camp there as a young coach, and he's like, "Hey, I need you to write this down and go inside and give it to one of the recruiting people." I didn't have pen or paper in my pocket.
That's
Absolutely ripped me. I mean, it was like, if you want to coach, you need to have paper and pen. So now, not even like on the field, but like around the offices and in school, there's always a pen in my shirt, and I've got paper folded up in my back pocket.
There's always something, yeah.
Always something.
That's hilarious.
Note to self: I got chewed out by James Franklin, and then I carried a pen and paper with me ever.
It's a good story.
Can you chew him out now? That'd be great.
I was going to say, well, what we found out was that this is the least important thing in Justin's life because every other situation, he's got pen and paper.
Yes.
But right now, no way.
Well, I looked at my printer behind me. No paper, of course, no paper, except for the old ones from last week. So there we go.
I'm emailing James Franklin right now and letting him know it happened again.
Yeah, guest star, James Franklin.
Please, yeah. I mean, I told you to get it done.
Yeah.
All right. So let's got the questions. What impact will go? We talked about it a little bit. What impact will going to quarterback number 3 have on Northwest next week against Pitt State?
Well, I think for Northwest, the good thing for them is, unlike like West Florida and some other teams, they are defensive first football team, so they're built to maybe win some low scoring football games and withstand maybe not the best quarterback play for majority of the game. They're playing a Pittsburgh State team that I think Max Sexton's a good quarterback for them, so he might be able to press that secondary a little bit. But for Northwest, to really attack their defense, you got to be able to block their front four and establish the running game a little bit early on. It's really tough to do versus Northwest and get some play action going like that. And I haven't really been able to see that really happen this year so far. Northwest, the defense has not allowed a touchdown in the first half or the fourth quarter this year. They're just playing lights out, and they're kind of all amped up and ready to go. They got some really fast linebackers. Jackson Barnes there in the middle is this year's version of Jacob Volstad. So I think the defense is going to be enough to keep them in that game, and they're opportunistic enough to maybe force a turnover or two as well and give the offense some good field position. And with Alan McKellar at running back, it really gives them some more juice in that running game too. So Pitt State's going to have to probably load the box up to stop him. And then I'll give the young quarterback some opportunities with some one-on-ones on the outside with some explosive receivers as well. So I think Northwest will be fine. It's not ideal by any means. And I think Hohensee will probably start this week, but if he doesn't, seeing him get some playing time last week, I think it's good for the young quarterback too to get some live reps on the road kind of deal was good for him as well. They're a little more prepared for that this week. Kind of doing it at halftime and on the fly at Missouri Western was kind of difficult, but I think going forward they'll be fine with it. They're more ready for it.
All right, and this is a comment I'll take. This was a comment, and the reason I'm going to talk about is this is from Joe, who's a friend of mine, the guy I've met on several occasions, and I really like. I want to address it. It's not about football, but it's about editorial decisions. We didn't talk about Grand Valley and Saginaw Valley because it was boring. Grand Valley actually absolutely dominated the game. So, every bit of juice that Grand Valley was going to get was in the scoreboard. There was nothing to talk about. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to it's not just going to simply be a recap of how the top 25 teams do every Sunday night. That you can get on our scoreboard and many other ways, but we're just not going to talk about every top 25 team. Yes, Devin.
And I will say they play Ferris State in 2 weeks, and College Game Day should go to that game because the D1 games that weekend aren't good at all, and that could be a top 10 matchup in D2 that would be really cool if Game Day would actually go to a D2 game. That'd be the one to go to, a really good rivalry game, two really good teams. Something they just kind of put out there that I know someone already put it out on Twitter that I retweeted earlier this week. I'm like, I'll send that petition to get that game going. And I think I saw Chris tweet it out first, re-quote tweeting it a little bit there. So if we can get Ferris State, Grand Valley, a little Game Day action for D2 in a really fun atmosphere, I think it'd be a lot of fun.
So the there I have a better chance of running a marathon next week than that happening. But nonetheless,
If we can get some video footage of that, that'd be great.
well, it's not
It'll be the
video.
shortest marathon you ever saw.
5 seconds done, buddy. All right, so
Dang.
it looks like that's all the questions that I've seen. So we'll go ahead and end it there, guys. But before we go, I want to remind everybody to like and subscribe. Join us every week. We're here at 7 p.m. Central. Also want to thank Flow Sports, KELO TV, Fort Hays Athletics, and WJHL. They were the outlets that provided those highlights that we used, and it's a great service that they're doing by putting those on the internet for people to see and for us to use it, and we greatly appreciate having that in here. So I want to thank them. And again, follow us on Twitter. You see some of our Twitter accounts. I'm at D2FOOTBAll, and you see Witt's Twitter account. There'll be a link, in the description. There will be text showing you all of our Twitter accounts, and we'll hope to see you again next week at the same time. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, make sure you